giving my presentation on George Kelly, even though we didn't cover him yet. Probably will. So keep in mind that I'm not going to say every single bullet point, so if you need to pause and read, that's on you. I'm just going to highlight every slide so that this video is not 10 minutes. It's important to note on this slide that he experienced the Roaring '20s, Great Depression, and World War II as a young adult. He got a BA in physics and math because he wanted to become an engineer. But then he eventually changed his mind, got an MA in sociology. After getting his MA, it's important to note that he went and taught drama at a JC. This is important because this is where he began to develop his construct theory. His professional career. Here it's important to note that during World War II, he went and taught training programs to local pilots in the Navy. And he also spent the bulk of his career at Ohio State. And this is where he wrote The Psychology of Personal Constructs. This is an outline of his theory. His theory heavily focuses on this notion that every person is a scientist because we all observe and predict and explain events that occur to us, which gives rise to this construct. What he kind of viewed a construct as was that it's your way of perceiving events, and then you assign significance to the events. This gives rise to the fundamental postulate, which is how you predict the future based on your perception of events. With characteristics of constructs, you have super versus subordinate, basically just saying which is more important to you. But every construct has its own pole, emergent versus implicit, which is basically good or bad. But what you list under good or bad is definitely subjective. It's not objective in any way. Constructs are not permanent because people have the ability to change the way that they perceive events. It doesn't mean they will, but the ability's there. And this is very empowering because, for example, if you have a schema that you don't like, it's really easy to change it. All you have to do is monitor your patterns of thought and just alter the way that you perceive events. REP is just a fancy way of saying personality test. In this test, George Kelly would list a bunch of social roles in a person's life, and then he would have you write in your constructs from your most superordinate all the way down to subordinate, and then for each construct you would list an emergent and implicit pole. You can see it in the background. In his fixed role therapy, he would have people take on constructs opposite of their own and see how it made them felt. And as you can notice, there's this big emphasis on roles because with roles come these expectations, schemas, and basically it encompasses this whole notion of perception. This slide is probably the most important of all of them because it demonstrates how George Kelly came to this construct theory, how he developed it. Without going through the Roaring '20s, Great Depression, World War II, I don't think he would have thought the way that he thought. He rejected psychoanalytic thought. He thought it was bullshit. He focused more on natural disasters and the environment and how you perceive those environments. George Kelly would most likely say that my personality constructs that are superordinate are health consciousness and religion, because I use those to basically filter all the information that comes to me. My mom and I have the same superordinate constructs of health consciousness and religion, but there's a difference in how we perceive those constructs. With religion, I perceive more the grace aspect, and she's more focused on the authoritarian aspect and following of rules. And with health consciousness, she's more focused on being gluten-free, and I'm more focused on eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. So it's important to note that people can have the same superordinate constructs, but the way that they organize those constructs and perceive them is completely different. The biggest difference between Freud and Kelly was that Kelly was not a stage theorist and Freud was. Also, Kelly didn't really approve of Freud's works, and He kind of rejected psychoanalytic thought. But they both had this theory of opposites, as everyone does, even the ancient Chinese, with yin and yang. Um, but with Freud, he believed in a push and a pull, and Kelly only believed in a pull in different polarities, which was emergent and implicit, like I explained. Kelly and Rogers both shared this idea that they were equals to their patients rather than superior to their patients. This is very important because in today's society, the role of the therapist holds a superior position to their patients, or at least that's the assumption. And Kelly and Rogers also, they didn't limit themselves to traditional methods of therapy. They were more focused on what would work for each individual. And that's why I think that George Kelly's most important and impactful contribution is this notion that everyone is a scientist. It doesn't seem like this notion is held by many psychologists today. And so that's why I think it's also very important. And because it gave rise to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of the most effective forms of therapy that we have today. And so you can see that George Kelly had an overall impact on psychology, not only in his time, but even now, it's still impactful. And so that's why I think he's one of the most important researchers that we have. But yeah, thanks for listening. Sorry if me pressing the spacebar got a bit loud. That's just what happens. And y'all stay beautiful. Have a good day.